Hello and welcome back to the Rise to Her podcast. I have an incredible conversation for you today. Today, I had the pleasure of sitting with Kris Land, and Kris is an award-winning conscious entrepreneur and spiritual teacher whose work explores awakening through fear, remembrance, and inner truth. He is the author of The Infinity Within, a genre-defying book that blends spiritual insight, emotional honesty, and mythic storytelling. Alongside his creative work, Kris is a veteran CEO and serial entrepreneur who has founded 12 high-tech companies, achieving 11 successful exits and one IPO. His decades of real-world leadership bring grounded depth to conversations about healing, purpose, and conscious creation. He is the founder of Amazing Items for You Publishing and Campaign Catalyst Marketing, and is a husband and father of 3 boys. Today, you are going to have your mind blown open, just like I was. Kris has an incredible way of storytelling, of drawing the listener in, and your field, I can guarantee you, is going to expand just simply from his words. So please welcome Kris to the podcast, and thank you for being here for another episode of Rise to Her. If you haven't already, I would love if you could give me a review on whatever platform you're listening on, Apple, Spotify. It helps so much. Sharing this, leaving a comment, it really helps get this work out there. And I'm just so freaking grateful for you being here. All right, let's jump in. Welcome to Rise to Her, the podcast for purpose-driven leaders, professionals, and creatives who are no longer willing to sacrifice their peace, power, and purpose for someone else's version of success. Here, we peel back the layers of conditioning, hustle culture, and high-functioning burnout to reconnect with what's real, your inner wisdom, your intuitive voice, and your soul's truth. This is where science meets spirituality, where healing becomes embodied, and where success is redefined through alignment, not performance. I'm your host, Emily Greenway, trauma-informed alignment coach, spiritual scientist, and believer in a more meaningful world. In each episode, you'll hear grounded insights, soul-led conversations, and practical tools to help you lead from your truth, reclaim your energy, and rise fully into the life you were born to live. Because the world doesn't need more people performing. It needs more people fully alive. Let's rise. Kris, thank you so much for being here on the Rise to Her podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm excellent, Emily. Thank you for having me on your podcast today.
Yeah, it's great. So we had a schedule mishap last week, so I appreciate your flexibility. I wanted to make sure that we had the time to get you on here because you know what? We're human and we want to make sure that this allows for us to have those full conversations. So I'm excited for you to be here.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Cool. So, like I said with the intro, before everyone hopped on here, I really want folks to get to know you as a human being. Who was Kris before he became this award-winning author? So, before writing, before speaking about inner life, about consciousness, what kind of work were you doing? What did your life look like?
That's a complex question. I'll start with saying that the spiritual part of the journey actually wrappers around my technology space of my journey. So when I was younger, I was very much an introvert, or what is called a computer geek. When I was in my 10 and 12-year-old time, I started playing with electronics. When I was in junior high, I started selling Apple II computers, which will age me a bit. I had a gentleman that bought his Apple II for me and wanted accounting software written. So he knew what he wanted written. I knew how to write it. And so we wrote that. And then we sold the company when I was 17, 18. And it completely put me into a state of depression. And nowadays we hear stories about people that win the lottery and it ruins their lives. I had, for me, an example of how that looks. And what happened to me was I had lost all the goals I thought I was supposed to do. When I say lost, I accomplished all the goals that I was told I was supposed to do in this material world. I, worked hard, created a company, sold it, had a lot of money, and had no idea what was next. And so from that point, I kind of clawed my way up. And then a couple of different things coalesced to get me on the journey of writing what was originally called the Soul Path and now is called the Infinity Within. And that is, during my younger years, I had and still have a huge curiosity about things. And in that time, I spent a lot of time studying theologies. I also had a lot of what is considered not normal things happen to me as both a child and growing up. And that includes out of body experiences, NDEs or near death experiences, and just things that we're told aren't real and don't really exist. Well, they existed pretty real for me. So combine that with, I got hired at a bank in San Diego. My boss's name was Kris as well. And he was, how do you say it? A Titan blue atheist.
Mm.
And even though I have zero issue with people wanting to believe whatever they believe, for me, for him, it didn't sit right. And so I kind of dug into that a little bit and came up with 4 questions that by asking them, it kind of shows somebody when you ask them these questions that whether we have a soul or not, all the win is in believing we have one, and all the downside is in believing we don't. It's not designed to prove to anybody anything. It's just kind of to shed some light on some opportunities in one direction or the other. That got me to the very next question, which is, okay, what is a soul? What is it doing here? Why are we here? And then with all the other things that had happened, it really got me to dig in and start asking these questions in a big way. And I won't go into too much detail yet on that because that takes a little bit more time. But basically what happened is I came up with a bunch of concepts and ideas that then I wanted to write a book around. So I hired a ghostwriter. The ghostwriter kept trying to make it her own book. So I fired the ghostwriter. I then took all my notes for the book and put them in a filing cabinet, even though all the ideas and concepts and things I now was operating with and on. And then from that point on, I founded 11 more companies through my lifetime and took one public with a gentleman named Nolan Bushnell, who is the founder of Atari and Chuck E. Cheese and some other stuff. And the other 10 companies were either acquired or merged by other companies. Then I moved from California to Texas with my wife. We have 3 boys, and she had some challenges growing up in life. And so asked me a lot of questions about how I looked at how life operates. And I have zero problem sharing. And so went through a lot of the concepts with her of what I developed 40 plus years ago. And then in the beginning of 25, she says, you know, the things you've told me have helped me so fundamentally. You need to go finish this book. And so in 25, I put the first 3-4 months together of pretty much doing nothing but taking my notes and writing the book, and then published The Infinity Within in July of last year. And then it's been doing really well and getting a lot of people's both attention as well, seems to be helping a lot of people.
Beautiful. So it sounds like you are truly living in that soul contract work now. But what I'm hearing from your story is that you went through some depths of what I describe with my clients as the underworld. You mentioned selling your company. You were what, 17 at the time, and then came into a lot of money. And you said, I was in this depression. And that's feedback. That's feedback of something being off, something being out of alignment. So, can you tell me when you went from creating that company, selling it, what were you doing on the day to day that you believe led to this ultimate feeling of depression before you were able to have the curiosity? And I want to go into that in a little bit.
So I sold the company and then moved, actually during the selling, moved to San Diego and worked for a couple different places and was doing fine. found that what I was doing was no longer being like satisfying me. It wasn't giving me the feeling that I was doing something. I guess the best answer would be in my path.
Yeah.
And you said the right words. It was out of alignment. I was out of alignment. I didn't know what I needed or wanted to do next. I had, like many of us, been taught that we work hard, we make money, we have money, we retire kind of concept. Of course, all that happened at a very young age for me, and I'm not really going to retire at the age of 17 or 18. And so I was left with what now? And it took me probably 4 months or so of feeling what now and just being very kind of depressed and not wanting to do anything before I came upon three basic goals that I will never accomplish, but that I can always strive for. And put those into place, and that helped me kind of claw to the next step. And those three goals were have fun, learn, and do neither the harm or impedance of others. And those are three things that I can do and I can do daily, and I will never run out of.
So you were in this space of redefining what was possible for you. And you said something critical for humans that I need everyone to hear is that as a human being, we are goal oriented. There is nothing wrong with being goal oriented. And in fact, that's what allows us to stay intact with our soul contract, with taking the next steps. It is what progresses us. But what you did was really unique. It was not an endpoint with those three goals, it was an experience of life because you would clearly externally hit some really major goals and probably made money that a lot of people won't ever see in their life. And you said, and yet that wasn't it. So, what was your next step after you came up with these three questions of, I'm sorry, your three goals of having fun, not doing harm to others, and always learning at 17, 18 years old? What happened in the interim between there and the affinity within?
From there, I was able to at least do those things, enjoy those things, work towards those things. And I remember I was working for a gentleman named Kevin. He had a company called Advanced Consumer Technologies. And I got hired by Security Pacific Bank. And that's when I met Kris. And that was the trigger point. It was like a month or two into work where he told me he was an atheist because we were just talking about life stuff. And that was the trigger point for the next major piece, which was, okay, what is a soul? Why do we have one? If we do, what does it look like? And how does it feel? And then once I came up with the four questions for Kris, it was like, okay, well, they work for him. They obviously are questions that work for me. And that left me with kind of fundamental crux question of, great, if we have a soul, which I happen to believe we do, what does that look like? Why are we here? What's the point? What does a soul do here? And fundamentally, what is a soul?
You
And
allowed
that
them.
started me down the path.
Yeah, it sounds like you allowed him to become the mirror, the very thing that you needed. A lot of folks come to me and they're not even recognizing the signs and the synchronicities that are already available in their life. So you started with a curiosity.
And I would suggest to all people, when in a place of comfort, but more importantly, when in place of discomfort, that curiosity is one of the huge keys to getting free.
Absolutely.
And then you said an interesting word, serendipity or coincidence. A very long time ago, since I've been going to coffee shops and restaurants by myself, I have people, I'll be sitting and having a cup of coffee and reading my book, and some person will actually come come up and pull a chair out and sit down, not ask me, just pull a chair out, sit down and start talking to me. And they'll tell me their life story. I mean, stuff that you wouldn't tell normal people. They just have a whole conversation and I would talk and we talk. And when they're done, they get up and they walk away. And what I learned by being curious about this and by studying it is that not a single person that I talked to did not have a reason. And what I found is that every single one of them had something they needed to hear me say, and I needed to hear something they had to say. And once that was accomplished, that was it. And so then the soul path idea of that we are all intersected beings and connected beings. There is no such things as coincidences. In fact, I have a word for it. I say there is no such thing as coinkydinks.
Winky dinks.
And that we all meet, every single one of us, every single day for an actual purpose. And that purpose can be very small or very large or anywhere in between. But there's a reason that we're all intersecting with each other. We're on this podcast today or whatever the situation is. But in all cases, somebody has had some reason to hear what I had to say, and I needed to hear something they had to say.
And it's being open to that, right?
It's not only being open, but recognizing it. So many people are taught from a young age, the old idea that kids see ghosts and then their parents say, no, that's a dream or you hallucinated or that's not real. We're taught from a very young age, in almost all cases, it's taught to quote unquote protect us, right? We're scared. And so our parents want to keep us from being scared. So they tell us it's not real and blah, blah. And they mean well. However, what if it is real and now I'm being shielded and I'm being blocked away from what's really going on? As we move through life, we're kind of taught to ignore things that are happening all around us, miracles that are happening on a day by day basis. We put blockers up and that's not real. That didn't happen. I hallucinated. I had the wrong food. We have bazillions of excuses why these miracles that are happening aren't happening. And I would say that when we meet people, when we meet each other and have a discussion and share information and it sparks something in us, that in itself is a form of a miracle, right?
Absolutely.
And what we do with that, what we take with that, and what we learn from that is huge. And if we're taught to be small and we're taught to ignore this type of stuff, we don't see it and we don't expand.
Absolutely. You went from this awareness of knowing that there's a mismatch between the external and what you're feeling internally, right? That's the first stage that I say wakes up everyone in their spiritual journey to this awakening, this disorientation of, okay, now I'm awakening to, I think what is real, what is possible for me, right? And that is a really interesting experience for us as humans because it creates this deep cognitive dissonance within
And
us.
scariness.
Right. It's this uncomfortableness, this discomfort. And you even said at the beginning of the podcast, I encourage you to sit with it. And I can imagine that a lot of folks listening to this are in this discomfort of knowing that something more is possible. When you started questioning things in your life, when you started exploring what is the soul, what is the path, what became uncomfortable in your life?
Well, the uncomfortable came first for me, and that was not knowing what to do next, and then building the 3 goals, and then from there, the soul question. And then because of my engineering and technology background, I approach things with questions, lots of questions. And I also try to boil it down into simple to digest pieces of information or facts, or in this particular case, since some of these are not provable directly, hypotheses. So when you ask, what is the soul? In the book Infinity Within, Gabe, the main character's name is Gabriel, and he goes by Gabe. And I think it's in chapter 2, he meets his mentor, Elias. And Gabe is expecting people to come up and sit down with him, right? Because the book is designed where it's kind of an informal, non-fictional memoir of how I went through life. And yet it's based around fictional characters because I'm not trying to prove to anybody anything. I want them to follow the story and take with it what they want and not have any beliefs pushed on anybody. It's not what I want. And so Gabe's at a coffee store, coincidentally, and he's having coffee at his favorite place. And he sees this gentleman at the coffee place, and there's a connection. So Elias comes and sits down. And the opening question is, so do you believe you have a soul? And it's intentional, right? It's a question that we all banter around. And through the discussion, Gabe says, I think there is, but there's no proof. What proof is there that there's a soul? And Elias says, I get that. What proof do you have that love exists? And there's a couple other things that he asks the same type of question around. You don't have proof that love exists, but I would argue that everybody says that love exists. So what's the difference in believing in love, which is an emotion, and believing we have a soul? Kind of an interesting question.
I know I'm deep in thought here. I'm like soaking it all up. So tell us.
So then I started looking into, okay, so what is a soul? Well, then I dug pretty deep into my theology background. And I mean, I've gone all the way down to Sanskrit and Egyptian stuff, and I could name off a ton of different names of different spiritual leaders and thoughts and processes. The Bible's the easiest because it's the most read book on the planet. So I'm going to use that as the reference because it's got some really good stuff in it. And one of the things that's said in the Bible is that we are the children of God. Okay. And that we will inherit everything that our Father is. And Jesus tells his disciples, you will do everything I have done, which means the parting of the seas and the healing and all this stuff, and much more. What if these chapters and verses aren't there necessarily to teach us to pray to this, but to say, hey, folks, you are this? Which is an interesting question because it shifts the perception ever so slightly. But now if you read the chapters and verses with the question of maybe this is here to teach me something, to point something out to me, it gives them a more literal feeling than when I used to read it the other way. And I'm not, again, if people want to do this, that's great. If they don't, that's great as well. Assuming that our souls are godlike entities, meaning that we're the children of God, that begs the next question. What are we doing here? If we're these beings of omnipotent power, what are we doing here?
I love this.
And what is here?
Yeah.
And so, again, from my engineering background, great. I'm a soul and I'm omnipotent being. I exist outside and inside of time. I exist everywhere. What do I do? Well, I could only come up with three things. We create stuff. And when I say stuff, I mean stuff like universes, galaxies, dimensions, right? We destroy stuff and we play games.
Yes.
Okay, great. The first two I get. Pretty easy to describe creation and destruction. What is a game? I could only come up with three things that make up a game. You have pieces, you have turns, and you have rules. Fantastic. Now I've got the construct kind of put together. Let's take a look at the construct a little bit. Let's call it the game of Earth. First off, what is the game of Earth? It's the existence in a fourth dimensional universe, meaning time is the primary motivator.
Right.
When you go to 3 dimensions below, time doesn't exist. 5 dimensions above, time is there, but it's no longer the primary motivator. Great.
Hey there. If your body keeps asking for a different pace than your life allows, if you're moving through the year without clear moments to pause, reflect, or reset, if your intuition keeps whispering and you keep overriding it, Rooted was created for you. Rooted is a seasonal living membership for people who want a more ritualized, spiritually connected way of life, one that actually supports the work and impact they care about. Inside of Rooted, you learn how to live in rhythm with the wheel of the year, when to initiate, when to tend, when to rest, when to release, so your energy stays intact instead of slowly wearing thin. You'll explore your soul contract, work with energetics, and build practices that help your intuition guide your decision, not just inspire them. You get access to workshops like Shadow Work Portal, the Portal of Joy, and the Soul Contract Workshop, along with a growing vault of meditation and somatic practices this community returns to again and again. We gather for live full moon magic calls, bi-weekly coaching sessions with me, and weekly integration prompts to help you stay anchored in the season you're actually in. Rooted is available at a special pricing. You can join for less than $1 a day or receive full year access at 50% off. Rooted is for the curious, for those who want to stay devoted to their work without losing themselves in it. You can join at www.risetoher.com/rooted, or you'll find the link to join in the show notes. I'll see you inside.
So here I am, this being, omnipotent being of power. I'm in this construct that's a fourth dimensional universe. Why?
To play a game.
There's one thing you can do in a fourth dimensional universe you really can't do anywhere else.
Something with time?
Definitely with time. It's the primary motivator. And I know you know it. It's just, it has to like come out. Experience or experience emotion.
Yes. Be a human. Experience the full spectrum.
Well, experience, right. The experience. In this case, we are human as our playing piece, right? Because if I was a soul, would I find experiencing emotion interesting? I think so.
Yeah.
I mean, that might be fun. Kind of like when we sit down and play Monopoly. It's like, why do we play Monopoly? Well, we play it to have experience with our friends, right? And family. So I could kind of get why this would be an interesting thing. But a soul is not going to play a game that's boring or easy. So the same question comes down to a human. Do you play tic-tac-toe?
Not often.
Why?
Boring and easy. Right.
Really boring, really easy, right? After you figure out the first couple of turns, it's like, I get this, it's done. And then you play other games, and, arguably Go is one of the more difficult games that we've created as humans, right? Okay. Well, then you take that up a level. We're a soul. We're going to pick some pretty tough games to play. Okay. So we're at the pearly gates. We're looking into this thing called planet Earth. And we know we're going to be a part of us is part, or some of us is going to be the piece. So the first rule is we agree to not take our godly like abilities into the game. Because it wouldn't be a lot of fun to play Monopoly if I just take all the bank money and all the pieces and say they're mine. Right? Pretty boring game and nobody would want to play with me. So, first rule is put all my godly abilities to the side. That kind of works. Except that when my favorite dog runs across the street and gets run over, I go tap into my power and go, no, that didn't happen.
Yeah.
And even though I might feel some emotions, they're going to be pretty thin because anything I don't like, I just change. So there's rule 2. I agree to forget that I ever had them.
Yes.
Okay. Those 2 rules by themselves creates what I call infinite trap. Because if you put all your abilities up and you agree to forget you ever had them with no other rules, there's going to be a piece of you stuck here forever.
Right.
And souls aren't dumb. So rule 3, I'm going to have turns. What is a turn? Well, based on all the theologies I've studied, even though semantically they're said differently, it's a lifetime.
Mhm.
We're resurrected, whatever word you want to use. But basically, what happens in rule 3 is before we enter the game as a soul being to play the game, we kind of figure out what our turns look like, what things we're going to roughly accomplish each turn, and what things we're going to do and how many turns before we leave and exit the game. Great. Here's where it becomes a little more fun. If you accomplish things in the turn, you get to go next. But if you don't, you get to do it over and over and over again until you figure out what it is that that turn was supposed to have figured out. And then once you do that, you go to the next turn, the next turn, the next turn, and eventually leave the game. Great. That pretty much fits what a game is. Now we have rule 4. We're going to be totally invested when we're playing. Rules 5, 6, 7, and 8, I'll let you read about. Basically, that's the general gist of what I ended up coming up with during this whole deep dive into what is it we're really doing here.
Beautiful. Wow. I have so many thoughts, so let me see if I can concisely get them across to our listeners. But what I'm hearing you articulate is the beautiful miracle of life, of soul contract, of embracing that we get to sit here in this lifetime and have the miracle of playing the game. Now, some people might say the game feels rigged for one person versus the other. What would you say to someone that says, well, why is the game easier for that person versus another person?
I have a fantastic answer. In The Infinity Within, the introduction, I wrote in a very specific way. And my mom was very upset with me for one particular character. So I mentioned 4 characters in the beginning of the book in the introduction that are examples or signposts of what every one of us can be or can do. The first one, easy, Jesus Christ. Does some amazing things and even tells us in the Bible that you can do everything I've done. Pretty easy. The Buddha, done some amazing things in the mind space, body space area, right? One of the more modern writers that I feel has gone through a huge existential crisis and come out and written some very powerful books is Eckhart Tolle. Really fantastic stuff. And when I read his books, it was funny. I got his book, The New Earth, years ago, read it, got some stuff out of it, picked it up like 2 years later, read it again, and completely got new stuff out of it. Like things that I didn't even know existed. But the book's been on my bookshelf. Nobody rewrote my book. And yet I'm getting completely different stuff. And then a couple of years later, same deal again. My 4th choice is Elon Musk.
I remember you telling me that initially, and I was like, ooh, so tell us why.
Okay, here's a guy that's consistently told what's impossible for him.
Mm-hmm.
It's impossible to build a car manufacturing company in today's world. DeLorean completely failed and fell flat on his face. You can't do it. Not only has he done it, but arguably it's the largest car manufacturing plant on the planet now. It is impossible to reuse and land rockets. Nobody can do it. We've spent billions of dollars. NASA has spent billions of dollars. Other countries have spent billions of dollars. Nobody can do this. And a couple of years later, he's not only doing it, he's doing it almost daily.
Right.
You can never run more than one multi-million-dollar company. It's impossible. It'll completely consume all your time. Yeah. He's running 5 right now. So here's a guy, I wouldn't say, if we sat down with Elon and said, are you a spiritual leader? My bet would be, he'd say, no, not really. But look at what he's showing us is possible when you put your energy, time, and believing, the removal of doubt, what you're actually capable of doing.
Right.
And so I chose those 4 because they're different stools on the chair or on the table. And arguably, Elon is more in the material world. But look at what he's been told consistently, even as a child. You cannot do these things. And turned around and said, yeah, I'm not going to listen to any of you folks. I'm going to go do it anyway.
Yeah,
So that's what I would tell your listeners.
I agree. Beautifully said. Honoring the fact that we get to create our heaven or our hell. There will always be suffering. There will always be joy. It's learning to embrace, focus our intention, and claim our divinity. Because one of the things you said about one of the rules is forget that those godlike powers existed. And I like to remind folks too that part of this soul work, this contract is remembering that they did, right? And I
That
think,
they are those things.
yes, we are every part of that. And when we can embrace that and then choose to see that we do have the infinity within every aspect, we need to create our own heaven, to remember that we are God in soul form and that we ultimately have a contract to exist, to live in, and to play. Wow. I mean, what an experience life gets to be. And we do then get to play in the quantum. We get to experience what we desire instead of focusing on, well, I just want the money. I just want that career. I just want this relationship. It is Dr. Joe Dispenza says it really beautifully of focusing on the change. And when you change, you get everything you desire instead of focusing on the desire and hoping you change in order to receive it. I believe your book is going to offer and open up paths and insights. I mean, just our conversation alone, like, I'm like, oh my God, we could go on for hours and hours. So we'll definitely have to have you back. So I
Awesome.
want to ask, if you could leave our listeners with any last thing to hold on to, and I know this is a big question, what would it be?
To boil it down, it's going to be a 3-tiered answer.
Beautiful.
So first, let's start with the beginning of fear. There's 2 types of fears in the world. There's the fear where the saber-toothed tiger is chasing you down the hill and you better pay attention or you get eaten. And then there's the fear that's all up here. Both are signposts in very different ways. Tiger snarling is a signpost, get up and run or hide under a rock where he can't get to you, right? The one that we feel more often than not is the fear of making a choice, of changing a thing, of doing something different, of going and talking to somebody. I mean, it can be all kinds of different versions of fear. As a child, when we're born, we don't have those fears. As we get older, we develop fears and shields, create what's real. I would tell you that first, when you start feeling fear or uncomfortableness, use that as a signpost. From the signpost, start asking curious questions about what doubts are coming up for me. And by asking about the doubts yourself, you can start looking at what things are actually creating the blocks to kind of part the curtain and get back to who you really are. And the more you can part doubt, the more you can remove doubt from the equation, I would argue the more and more connected you become to what you really are. So when you're depressed or anxious or fearful, first step is be curious. Second step is to look at the doubts and the things that exist underneath that, and then pull them apart, or actually just by shining a light on them, they tend to dissipate. But take a serious look at just how to get rid of them or to remove the doubts or accept that something that you might not be comfortable with might happen and decide consciously whether you want to go ahead and do this thing or not do this thing.
Yes. Taking your power back, getting curious. You are your own case study. I'm a scientist by training. Like, we are our own case study. Look at what you can do. Beautifully said. Thank you, Kris. I'm going to end with a few rapid fire questions, just super fun and light, and then you'll tell us where we can find you. So, first thing that comes to your mind, I'm going to give you either or. So, silence or music?
There are times where I use both.
I knew
Um,
you were going to say that.
yeah, I mean, music is incredibly powerful for remembering
Mhm.
and for taking people to different places in their life if they remember it from a different time, and even projecting forward.
Yep.
Silence gives us the space to start really listening to what's going on underneath. So I hate to say this, both.
Yes, that's fair. That's fair. I'll allow it. What is a color that you've been feeling really drawn to lately?
Well, I'm always drawn to it. Purple.
Purple. Me and you both, my favorite color. Where do you feel most clear mentally?
We're, I'm not sure I understand the question.
A physical location where you feel the most clear.
Where do I feel most comfortable?
Clear, yeah, clear.
Clear, comfortable, that
Yep,
kind of thing.
yep,
Uh, Mountain stream.
yeah, yeah, beautiful. And morning or evening quiet time?
My mornings are never quiet.
Life of
I
being a
have three
parent.
young boys.
Yeah.
They get up before I do. Um, I like the evening time probably the best because it gives me time to look back on my day, on the decisions and thoughts that I had, on things that I might do different the next day. And not from a blame, shame, or guilt point of view, but from a learning and how can I have more fun and learn more the next day.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Awesome. Thank you. Well, Kris, this has been absolutely amazing. Where can folks find you, find your book?
I've been very blessed. The first three pages of Google have my name now and the infinity within.
Awesome.
So if you just put me into Google, you'll find me. The infinity within is being sold at Barnes and Noble, Amazon, of all places, Walmart. There's bookstores in Norway. There's a oh come on, Bangladesh. There's some in Spain. It's all over the place. It's really reached a lot of places. You can go to krisland.com, which is the spelling KRISLAND.com, and that's kind of my home page. It has all my different books that I've written, so it's kind of a bit of a mishmash because there's the Infinity Within trilogy and that whole area. There's also a set of books, 10 book series on how to build your dream home. I've published the first five. I'm getting ready to publish the sixth. And then I do a lot of training, which is the Building Wealth Clinic part. And people in the training that I provide and the mentoring I provide, a lot of them have the same questions around money. And so I wrote a book called The Finance Book for Young Adults. And it doesn't have, you don't have to be young to read it, but what it does is it attempts to give power back on what money is and take a look at how ultra rich and rich people look at money, which is very different than what we're trained or how we're trained to look at money, and how to approach it differently and use it differently. Even though it's a tool, they use it as a very different tool than we're taught.
Yeah.
And so all my books that I write are really designed within its particular niche to provide knowledge and freedom for people reading it in those spaces.
Awesome.
And then, yeah, like I said, Amazon.com, type in my name or the book, Barnes and Noble. I mean, all the different places you'll be able to find me there.
Great. And I'll link everything in the show notes below, including our website. Guys, get his book, look into the magic that he has, and just remember that you have the potential to do this. Get out of your own way, learn to play the game, and wow, it can be a pretty spectacular time. Kris, thank you so much for your
Absolutely.
time and for being here.
Thank you very much. Very much appreciated.
Thank you so much for being here, for listening, reflecting, and rising into more of who you really are. If this episode sparked something inside of you or reminded you you're not alone, then you're exactly where you're meant to be. To keep the conversation going, come hang out with me on Instagram at rise2her. I always love hearing what's resonating for you. And if you're craving a space to explore intuitive, soul-led living with others who get it, our community is growing and you're always welcome. Until next time, trust yourself, honor your rhythm, and keep rising.